Yo, what's up guys? Alpha here, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 1 with on the arena ladder. As you can see from the untapped screenshot, I'm currently 37-5 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, you'll have the full deck list there that you can import into arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And I'm also in the process of writing a full text article about this deck for MTG Zone Premium that will have more details, a full sideboard guide, how I change the deck for best of 1, and some tips and tricks to help you play the deck as well. So as soon as that's finished and up, I'll link that down in the description as well. But anyway, with that one out of the way, this is my red-white Thopter aggro deck in Historic, and this is one of the fastest aggressive decks I've played in a long time, and it has a ton of resilience too. So we're going to start off by having a look at the most important cards in the deck. First of all, as you can see, we've got Lurrus of the Dream Den as the companion, which is the most powerful companion if you can enable it. 3 mana 3/2 with lifelink, and once during each of your turns you may cast 1 permanent spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard. So as I go through the rest of the cards, I'm going to explain the cards that work well with Lurrus, because there is a lot of great synergy with Lurrus in this deck. So the rest of the cards, I think the most important card in the deck is Retrofitter Foundry. So this is a 1 mana artifact. You can pay 3 to untap it, you can pay 2 and tap it to create a 1/1 servo, you can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice a servo to create a 1/1 Thopter, and then you can tap it and sacrifice a Thopter to create a 4/4. So this is just powerful on its own right as a value engine. You know, if the game's going long and you're grinding, you can just sink your mana into this, make a bunch of tokens over the course of the game. But the really powerful thing about Retrofitter Foundry is being able to tap it and sacrifice a Thopter to create a 4/4, because if you can play Thopters that aren't from Retrofitter Foundry in the early game, like from Ornithopter, Barbed Spike, or Yotia Declares War, you can start creating 4/4s on turn 1 or 2, which is so powerful and so ahead of curve. So, like I said, we've got Ornithopter, Barbed Spike, and Yotia Declares War that can produce Thopters, which allows some insanely fast starts off Retrofitter Foundry. And because we have 12 ways to make Thopters, one of which is recurable off Lurrus, we can often make 4/4s on turn 1, 2, and 3, and just completely run over the opponent. So Retrofitter Foundry, great as a value engine, but allows some insanely fast starts with our other Thopters as well. Then next up we've got Yotia Declares War, and this is kind of the backbone of the deck. This is the card that the deck is almost built around, and I've been so impressed with this deck. So this is a 2 mana saga, and it has read ahead, which means you can start at any of the 3 chapters, and there are situations where you want to start at all 3. You know, it's super flexible cards. So first of all, chapter 1, create an O2 Thopter. So like I said, this is great with Retrofitter Foundry. We can often curve out Retrofitter Foundry into Yotia Declares War on turn 2 and immediately get a 4/4 on turn 2, which is insane. Then, second chapter, tap any number of untapped artifacts you control. When you do, it deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker. So this is great because it works as removal, and we're able to flood the board so quickly with artifacts that this can even take out 2 or 3 toughness creatures on turn 3. You know, if you play this on turn 2 and you have, you know, Yotia Declares War, Darksteel Citadel, and an Ornithopter, you can take out a 3 toughness creature. And the really nice thing about this is it can also take out bigger creatures. You know, one of the biggest issues with aggro decks like this that I found in the past is you have a really tough time dealing with much bigger creatures, something like a Baneslayer Angel or an Elder Gargaroth, and this enables you to kill those bigger creatures later in the game, because as the game goes on, you're going to flood the board with artifacts, so it's very easy for this to kill bigger creatures, you know, 5 or 6 toughness creatures. It can also kill planeswalkers, which is huge, because, you know, a lot of the time control decks will go like Teferi and Minus, and because you're not running any haste creatures, you can't really punish that, but Yotia Declares War allows you to kill planeswalkers like that as well, which is huge. And the fact it's recurable with Lurrus is absolutely amazing as well. This is probably the strongest interaction with Lurrus in the deck, because it sacrifices itself on the 3rd chapter, which means that if we have Lurrus in play, we can just play Yotia Declares War and immediately go to chapter 2 just to use it as a removal spell. Then it will sacrifice itself, and then you can do it again the following turn. So Yotia Declares War, such a powerful removal effect on the 2nd chapter as well. And then chapter 3, up to 1 target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4 until the end of turn. So, you know, we're an artifact aggro deck, so turning one of your artifacts into a 4/4 just enables you to force through extra damage. Obviously it's great with the 0/2 that you make off the 1st chapter. You know, if you do end up playing this on turn 2, a curve out that you come and do, just make a Thopter, kill a creature on the 2nd chapter, and then just make your O2 a 4/4, get in for 4 damage. You can also animate Darksteel Citadel, which is really nice if the opponent's playing destruction-based removal. It's a way to force through damage. And we have a lot of other flyers in the deck as well, so the 3rd chapter just allows you to force through a bit of extra damage, and then like I've said, it's just insane to loot with Lurrus as well, which is really strong. Then the next most powerful card in the deck is Machiko's Reign of Truth. So this is another saga, 2 mana, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and/or enchantment you control. So this is absolutely insane at forcing through extra damage. As you can see from the curve of the deck, we're so low on curve, so we can flood the board with artifacts really quickly. It's an it counts enchantment, so it counts itself. Also counts Yoti's Declares Wars, because that's an enchantment as well. So, like I said, this just enables you to force through a bunch of damage through on the first couple of chapters. You know, the Thopters having flying is great because it allows us to force through a bunch of damage in the air. We also have Shadow Spear that gives our creatures trample and lifelink, so equipping a creature with Shadow Spear and then using Machiko's Reign of Truth is another way to force through a bunch of damage and gain a bunch of life in matchups where that's relevant. And then the third chapter transforms into Portrait of Machiko, which is a 0/0, but it gets +1/+1 for each artifact and/or enchantment you control. So this is really strong because, you know, you force through a bunch of damage off the first two chapters, and then you get a huge threat in and of itself off the backside of it as well. So Machiko's Reign of Truth, really, really strong at helping to close games out and force a bunch of damage through. So those are the three most central cards in the deck, and they really bring the backbone for just forcing through a bunch of damage in the early game, but also allowing us to grind pretty effectively as well. So the rest of the cards in the deck, first of all, we've got 4 copies of Ornithopter, so 0 mana, 0/2 with flying. Obviously it's a Thopter, so this enables our fastest starts where you can go Retrofitter Foundry and Ornithopter on turn 1 and immediately make it into a 4/4. Then if you do have that set up and you get Lurrus later in the game, you can start bringing back Ornithopters and sacking them to Retrofitter Foundry every turn to just repeatedly make 4/4s every turn, which is sick. But even outside of Retrofitter Foundry, Ornithopter is great with Yoti Declares War because it allows us to get more artifacts in play quickly and we can take out bigger creatures in the early game. You know, like I said, if we go Darksteel Citadel, Yoti Declares War, and Ornithopter on turn 2, we can kill a 3 toughness creature on the opponent's turn on chapter 2, which is sick. So Ornithopter allowing us to kill bigger creatures off chapter 2 of Yoti is really strong. And getting more artifacts in play is also great with Machiko's Reign of Truth. You know, we can just get an extra artifact in play, give a creature an additional +1/+1, and it's also great as a target for Machiko's Reign of Truth as well. Because it has flying, we can just give it a huge buff. A lot of decks in the format right now aren't running any flying or reach blockers, so we can just, you know, have an Ornithopter, flood the board with artifacts and enchantments, give it +1/+1 off the Machiko's Reign of Truth, and just force through a bunch of damage that way. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Esper Sentinel, so 1 mana, 1/1 artifact creature. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player plays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. So obviously this is just such a generically strong card, really, really strong against a lot of the decks in the format right now. You know, is it Wizards, is it Phoenix, Auras, Control? Loads of their strategies involve casting non-creature spells, so you're going to get a bunch of value off the Esper Sentinel. We have a bunch of ways to boost its power as well. You know, we've got Machiko's Reign of Truth, we've got Shadow Spear, we've got Barbed Spike, which we can equip as an artifact. So Esper Sentinel just really, really strong. You know, in an artifact deck, this is just basically a staple because it kind of forces the opponent to play off curve or generates us card advantage, both of which we're really happy with. Then we've got 4 copies of Portable Hull, 1 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-opponent controls mana value 2 or less. So this is just really efficient removal. That's an artifact itself, so it plays in with all of our other artifact synergies. Great at taking out early creatures, you know, against, is it Wizards? It's really important to have early removal to stop them racing us, but it can also hit non-creatures as well. So if you're against Affinity, for example, you can take out opposing Retrofitter Foundry. So Portable Hull, just a really great card in a lot of matchups where you want the early removal. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Toolcraft Exemplar, 1 mana, 1/1, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control an artifact, it gets +2/+1 until end of turn, and if you control 3 or more artifacts, it also gains first strike. So this is such an aggressively statted creature. It's pretty bad on defense, but this deck is so fast that you're almost always going to be playing the aggro role, even if you're going second. And a 1 mana 3/2 is just such a strong rate as an aggressive card, and it's so easy for us to get the first mode off. You know, all we need is 1 more artifact in play. We can trigger that off Darksteel Citadel, we can trigger that on turn 2 off an Ornithopter or something, and then it's also very easy for us to get 3 or more artifacts in play, and first strike just makes it really difficult for the opponent to block it as well. So Toolcraft Exemplar, super aggressively statted creature. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Shadow Spear, 1 mana equipment, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. You can pay 1, permanents your opponent's control use hexproof and indestructible end of turn. That basically never comes up, but it's always worth remembering in kind of corner case scenarios, like if you're against an Esper Greasefang deck and they're using Sealand Hallowblade, or I can't remember the name of the other 2-drop, but there's another 2-drop that does a similar thing. You can pay 1 to stop that having indestructible, which is a nice upside, but we're mainly just interested in equipping this to creatures and just completely swinging the race. You know, we have a lot of ways to make really big creatures, either off Retrofitter Foundry or Machiko's Reign of Truth, or, you know, Ingenious Smith will grow over the course of the game. So equipping a big creature with Shadow Spear, you know, especially Shadow Spear plus Machiko's Reign of Truth against an opposing aggressive deck just swings the race so far in your favour that the opponent's really going to struggle to win from that point. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Barbed Spikes. This is a 2-mana artifact. It's an equipment, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 Thopter and attach Barbed Spike to it, and the equipped creature gets +1/+0. So essentially what this is a 2-mana 2/1 with flying, which is like, okay, I mean obviously that's good at forcing through some extra damage, but the things we're really interested in here is the token it creates is a Thopter. So this is another way for us to trigger Retrofitter Foundry. You know, we can go turn 1 Foundry, turn 2 Barbed Spike, immediately make a 4/4, and the equipment sticks around for later in the game as well. The equipment itself obviously isn't the best thing, but it is nice to have lying around. You know, you can equip it to an Esper Sentinel, you can equip it to one of your flying creatures just to force through a bit of extra damage, which is nice. The other really nice thing about Barbed Spike is it's 2 artifacts for 2 mana, because the Thopter you create is an artifact and the Barbed Spike you create is an artifact. So again, similar to Ornithopter, this is great at enabling us to kill bigger creatures with Yotia Declares War, because we can tap both the Thopter and the equipment to, you know, add an additional 2 damage to what we're killing. It's also really strong with Machiko's Reign of Truth at giving additional damage as well. So Barbed Spike, really nice with Retrofitter Foundry, and really nice with Yotia Declares War and Machiko's Reign of Truth as well. The one downside of Barbed Spike is it's not recurable with Lurrus. You know, unlike Ornithopter or Yotia Declares War, Barbed Spike, you know, we create the Thopter and then the Barbed Spike sticks around on the battlefield, which is kind of a disadvantage with Lurrus, but being able to equip this to something like a Sentinel or a Flyer is nice as well at just forcing through a bit of extra damage. Next up we've got Ingenious Smith. So this is a 2-mana 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact from among them and put it into your hand, and whenever one or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, it gets a 1/1/1 counter on it. So this is really sick at just helping us dig for whatever we need. We have a ton of artifacts in the deck. It's really great at enabling us to find early Retrofitter Foundry combos, because if we have the Foundry, we can use Ingenious Smith to find Ornithopter or Barbed Spike. You know, if we have these two, we can dig for the Foundry. Helps us dig for Portable Hole if we need removal. We have Glass Casket in the sideboard. You know, Hearse is really important as well in matchups where we need Graveyard Hate. So Smith just really good at digging us for whatever we need. We also have Darksteel Citadel, which is a land that it can find as well, which is really nice. And then it will grow over the course of the game as we play artifacts. It's very nice with Retrofitter Foundry as well, because we can trigger it during the opponent's turn by putting artifacts in play off the Foundry. So Ingenious Smith, just great at digging us for what we need, and then we'll just grow over the course of the game as well, which is really strong. So that's the main deck. It's been so powerful. Honestly, this deck is one of the fastest aggressive decks I've played in a long time, and it has a ton of ways to grind into the mid to late game because of Lurrus, because of Retrofitter Foundry as well. And Yotia Declares War plus Lurrus is such a sick combination. I've been so impressed with it. Then in terms of the mana base, we got 22 lands, which just felt like a decent amount to me. Obviously we're mainly white, but we do want to have red on turn 2 for Yotia Declares War, so we have all of the good early red-white dual lands. We also have Spire of Industry here as well. The reason I'm not running 4 Spire of Industry is because with 4 Darksteel Citadel that only produces colourless, and we do have a decent number of white 1-drops, we do need to have white mana on turn 1 to enable Esper Sentinel, Portable Hole or Toolcraft Exemplar. So I think if you go to 4 Spire of Industry, 4 Darksteel Citadel, you're going to end up with a lot of hands where you have like a Citadel and a Spire, and you don't have a way to play your white 1-drops on turn 1. So I've liked this split so far. Darksteel Citadel has been really strong. It counts as an artifact for Machiko's Reign of Truth and the second chapter of Yotia Declares War. You can also animate it with Yotia Declares War, like I said, so that's a really powerful interaction. You can find it off the Ingenious Smith as well, so even though we're running a 2-colour deck, I think we can afford to be running 4 Darksteel Citadel. And the main reason I'm running this over Treasure Vault, you know, Treasure Vault you can sacrifice to put treasures into play, which can be good at forcing through extra damage with Machiko's Reign of Truth, but I prefer Citadel because it's really nice to animate it with the Yotia Declares War and it not be vulnerable to destruction-based removal, which is nice. We got 1 Iganji, which is basically free to run in a white deck, you know, just extra removal, which is nice, and then a few basics to round the deck out. So that's the mana base. And now onto the sideboard, 4 copies of Glass Casket, 2 mana artifact when it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls mana value 3 or less. So this is great in matchups where we just need extra creature removal, you know, against wizards, goblins, merfolk, humans, you know, any creature deck, this is great. There are a lot of 3 mana creatures that are very important to kill that Portable Hole doesn't hit, you know, stuff like Goblin Chieftains, Fireland of Sea and Sky. And just having a high density of removal in those matchups is really great. You know, we can pull it off in Genius Smith as well, which is really nice. 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse for Graveyard Hate. I also just like bringing this in general in the Rakdos matchups because they generally have some graveyard interactions. You know, a lot of builds are running Croxus, some are running Dreadhorde Arcanist, some are running Seasoned Pyromancer as well. And Unlicensed Hearse, just as a threat that's going to grow throughout the course of the game, is really good in that matchup because any of your creatures that can crew it can then threaten a lot of damage out of nowhere, which is really nice. So Hearse, important as Graveyard Hate. Again, you can pull it off in Genius Smith, which is really nice. And we got 2 copies of Mana Tithe, 1 mana instant, counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. So this is pretty much exclusively here for the control matchup. And I felt like this is kind of like, it's not the best card ever, but when it pops off, it's so good. The main reason I've got this here is because of Divine Purge. Now, this deck, because it's so aggressive and because it kills a lot quicker than regular builds of Affinity, you don't have to worry about Divine Purge as much because you don't give the opponent as much time to find it as you do in the Affinity decks. But I felt like I wanted some kind of effect that can give you some protection against that. And even if you don't use it to stop a Divine Purge, you know, countering like a Wandering Emperor or a Teferi with this is so strong as well. People don't expect it either. I don't think you can really afford to be running more than 2 copies though, because it's not a card you want to be drawing in multiples. It's a particularly bad top deck later in the game, but I feel like 2 copies is a good amount because it means that you're going to draw it in the early game fairly often, and being able to counter, you know, an important early game spell like a piece of interaction like a Divine Purge, a Wandering Emperor, or just a Teferi is often going to be good enough to win you the game. And I felt like in white and red you don't really have great effects to help you fight in that matchup. I feel like that matchup is all about racing and a bit of disruption. We do have Reckoner Bankbuster here as well that I'll go over while we're talking about the control matchup. So this is again for the grindy matchups, 2 mana vehicle. Enter the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it, pay 2, tap it and remove a charge counter to draw a card, and then once you've done that 3 times you create a 1/1 that can crew it. So this is good for grindy matchups, which is why I've got 1 copy here. I bring it in against control and mid-range as well, but I feel like specifically against control you don't want to go too heavy on these sorts of effects because as the game goes on they're just going to be more likely to find Farewell, Divine Purge, cards that just completely blow you out. So I think for the most part the reason I've got something like a Mana Tithe here is to just, you want to lean much more into your aggressive game plan and then use Mana Tithe to stop a key piece of interaction, which is often good enough to force lethal through. I don't think you can really afford to go too hard into the grind into the late game of something like Reckoner Bankbuster. So that's why I've got the 2 copies of Mana Tithe here. Next up we've got 1 copy of Pithing Needle, so 1 mana artifact, and as it enters the battlefield choose a card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So this is another card that I bring in against control as well, mainly to name Teferi. You know, a lot of the time they'll just run away with the game off the back of Teferi, so just getting this into play, even though they can kill it with stuff like March of Otherworldly Light or Divine Purge, when they don't have those cards, it's just going to stop them being able to run away with the game. I also like bringing this in against other decks, like I bring this in against Goblins as well, because you can name stuff like Kranko, so any deck where they've got a key card with an activated ability, this is nice to bring in. Again, I don't think you really want to be running more than 1 of, because it's not a card that's great to draw in multiples, especially if the deck you're bringing it in against only has 1 good target to name as well. Next up we've got 4 copies of Hushbringer, so this has been an absolute MVP out of the sideboard, because this is so strong against a lot of the top tier decks right now. This is really strong against Goblins because it shuts off Muxus, Goblin Matron, Sling-Gang Lieutenant, Munitions Expert. It's really good against humans because it shuts off Thalia's Lieutenant, Ranger Captain, Elite Spellbinder. It's really good against, you know, more fringe decks like, well, Angels as well, but like other fringe decks like Shamans, any deck that revolves around a lot of Enter the Battlefield abilities. This just completely shuts it off. And the only card in the main deck that this affects is Ingenious Smith. So when I'm bringing in Hushbringer, I basically just swap out 4 Ingenious Smith for the 4 Hushbringer. But this is just so strong at shoring up these matchups because traditionally, you know, artifact aggro decks have really struggled against something like Goblins, something like Humans, or especially a deck like Angels as well. So Hushbringer on its own is a card that can basically just completely flip that matchup on its head, and it basically doesn't affect you negatively at all. The other nice thing about Hushbringer as well is that it's, you know, it's a flying lifelinker, which is really, really nice with Machiko's Running of Truth. You know, oftentimes when I bring it in Hushbringer, getting a full board full of artifacts and then just boosting it with Machiko's Running of Truth just completely swings the life total in your favour and completely puts the game out of reach as well. So Hushbringer has been an absolute MVP out of this sideboard. Such a great card. But anyway, that's the deck. Like I said, I've been so impressed with this deck. It's capable of some insanely fast starts, and it has a surprising amount of resilience as well. So I've been so impressed with it. Next up, I've got some gameplay. I've just got 5 matches I was playing with this deck so you guys can see it in action. Give me a shout in the comments below if you've got any questions about the deck at all, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Okay, sweet, here we go. Okay, so we're going second here. and her. I mean, this isn't the fastest hand ever, but I think this is a fine keep. You know, we've got early interaction. If we draw Retrofitter Foundry, this hand's absolutely insane. Okay, so against Goblins, interesting. So, I mean, already this is quite a tough decision whether we go for Exemplar or Portable Hole. Because Portable Hole is nice. Obviously, you know, Portable Hole Prospector is always going to be good. And then it's one extra artifact in play for Yotia Declares War. But I kind of want to save Portable Hole for Snoop or Horde Master or Battlecry Goblin for that matter. So I'm going to lead on the Exemplar here. Plus, I want to start applying pressure back. You know, I feel like if we go for Portable Hole, we're kind of pigeonholed into playing Yotia Declares War next turn. And then, you know, we're kind of on the back foot at that point. We're not applying any pressure. Okay, why are the Goblins? So we have to kill Prospector this turn now, because otherwise that will give them the opponent an opportunity to play Muxus on turn 3, which we can't let happen. You know, that's going to be impossible for us to beat. So we have to kill Prospector with Portable Hole here. Unfortunately, since we didn't play Portable Hole, I mean, if we played Portable Hole last time, we wouldn't have to worry about the Prospector. Okay, another Portable Hole. Well, we're definitely going to take out the Prospector here. And I also don't mind going for the treasure token off the Wily Goblin here, because that will stop them playing, you know, that will just slow them down in general to the point where Yotia Declares War, the second chapter, is going to be more relevant. You know, if we let them have the treasure, they could potentially just play a Krenko next turn, and we don't really have good ways to deal with that. You know, Yotia Declares War, we would need to create the O2, so at least taking it out shuts that opportunity off for the opponent. Now they've played a 2-2, we can go straight to chapter 2 of Yotia Declares War here. Oh, okay, another Exemplar is nice because that allows us to use our third mana, so we can play Exemplar, go straight to chapter 2 of Yotia Declares War, tap down both the Portable Holes to take out the Chieftain. Now it is a little bit of a concern because if they play Krenko next turn, we don't have 3 artifacts in play to kill it off the second chapter of another Yotia Declares War. Okay, they play Matron, thankfully. If we'd drawn another artifact that we could play alongside it, that would have helped us kill the Krenko. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they get here. If they get Prospector, it probably means they already have Muxus. Okay, they go for Krenko, sure. So, and another Portable Hole, interesting. So we're definitely going to use the Yotia Declares War to turn Portable Hole into a creature here. I like going the other Yotia Declares War on chapter 1 here, and now we have 3 artifacts in play to be able to kill the Krenko. Attack in for a lot of damage here. So getting that early Exemplar down has really enabled us to go on the front foot. And then I like going Portable Hole here because it means that they have less play if they have a Skirk Prospector, and they're really on the back foot now because we're going to be attacking for 6 next turn. They're kind of forced to chump block. Well, Battle Squadron, that's not one I've seen. Okay, Retrofitter Foundry is great here. We can kill the Battle Squadron with the Yotia Declares War here, and then we can just, you know, we could either kill the Matron here off the second chapter or just go straight to the third chapter to turn the Thopter into a 4-4. So multiple ways for us to deal lethal here. So we'll just use the second chapter, kill the Matron here, and then we just attack for 6 off the Exemplar. So getting Exemplar down on turn 1 looks like it paid off. We could have potentially got punished for that if they'd had like a Krenko immediately on turn 4, but so I'm still not 100% sure whether Portable Hole or Exemplar was the right line there. This is definitely a Hushbringer matchup. When I bring in Hushbringer, I bring out Smith. Definitely want Glass Casket, and typically when I bring in Glass Casket, I also just board out Barbed Spike. I think I like bringing Pithing Needle here as a way to just stop Krenko as well, because, you know, we have Hushbringer to stop Muxus. The only other way to really win, you know, if we have Hushbringer in play is if they get Krenko and just start activating it manually. So Pithing Needle just shutting off Krenko is really nice. Plus, even if we don't have Hushbringer, they look like they're playing the Krenko build anyway, so their main Muxus hits revolve around Krenko anyway, so just getting Pithing Needle naming Krenko is good enough. Snap keep any hand with Hushbringer basically, because it's so strong in the matchup. You know, it shuts off basically all of their removal. They're not running black for Munitions Expert, which it shuts off anyway. I mean, they could be, you know, they're realistically probably going to have a Braid against us, but they need to draw it basically, and they can't tutor for it with Matron or anything. So okay, Snoop is a bit annoying, but I think I'm just going to go for Hushbringer here. We just need to shut off their ETBs as quickly as possible. They could very well have Matron on turn 3. Oh wow, Shatter Skull Smashing. I mean, I'm hoping they have to play that as a land, because that is a potential answer for Hushbringer. Okay, they attack. Definitely not going to block here. So, I mean, we can kill the War Chief here off the second chapter of Yotia Declares War, but we need to make sure that we don't auto-tap the Darksteel Citadel. That's something you need to be very aware of. You know, not only auto-tapping with Yotia Declares War, but if you're playing Yotia Declares War on turn 2 and you have a Darksteel Citadel, it's almost always worth playing the Citadel first, because that then allows you to kill a creature with more toughness, because you can tap the Citadel off the second chapter. Okay, I'm really hoping they play... Okay, sweet. They did have to play the Shatter Skull Smashing as a land, which is really big. Although Battlecry Goblin, that... I mean, that is pretty good from their point of view. That is applying quite a lot of pressure here. Okay, another Yotia Declares War is nice here. So we can kill one of their creatures. Just, it's tough to know which creature to kill. And I'm just trying to think what we animate here. I think... if we're going to play Esper Sentinel, we can animate the Darksteel Citadel, but if we want to play Machiko's Reign of Truth here, I think we have to just use this on the Esper Sentinel, turn it into a 4/4. So yeah, I think we're going to buff the Sentinel here, and... So they got Battle Squadron on top. I mean, I think we have to kill one of their creatures. I'm just trying to think which is the most important one to kill. I mean, Battlecry Goblin, War Chief, and Snoop are all creatures that I would like to be able to kill, but I think we probably have to kill the War Chief here, because it will, you know, if they hit Krenko on top, that's going to be a disaster if they have a War Chief in play. Plus, the Battle Squadron they're going to draw is 5 mana, but it's reduced to 4 off the War Chief, so I think we have to kill the War Chief here. So we have to go straight to Chapter 2 of Yotia Declares War here. And unfortunately, even though we buff the Sentinel, we have to just tap it down to kill the War Chief here. Just trying to think, you know, I mean, Battlecry Goblin is still pretty bad for us because they can pump their whole team, but I think War Chief is just the most important threat to kill here. And then we'll play Sentinel, and I'll attack... I mean, maybe we should have held that Hushbringer back, but I feel like they're going to just boost their whole team with the Battlecry Goblin anyway. Okay, they play Matron off the top. Thankfully, Hushbringer shuts that down. And it doesn't look like they're going to activate the Battlecry Goblin this turn, which is pretty huge. So now we've got Machiko's Reign of Truth, we can hopefully just completely swing the race in our favour next turn, because we can boost the Hushbringer by quite a lot. Okay, they attack in here. I mean, it is tempting to block the 1/1 just to stem the bleeding a bit, but that will mean 1 less power on the Hushbringer off Machiko's Reign of Truth next turn. Okay, and Shadow Spear is pretty nice. So, we can... We can Shadow Spear and equip on the Esper Sentinel and boost the Hushbringer here. Hold on, let me just think which is the best. I mean, we're definitely going to be playing and equipping the Shadow Spear. I'm just trying to think. It's probably worth using Machiko's Reign of Truth on the Hushbringer. I'm just trying to think whether it really matters or not. You know, because we could use Machiko's Reign of Truth on the Sentinel and hold the Hushbringer back on defense, but I think we're going to be gaining so much life that the opponent's just not going to be able to win on the following turn anyway. You know, if they still had a War Chief, they might be able to, but as things stand, we're going to be gaining so much life anyway that I think we're pretty safe that we're not dead on the backswing here, and we have Esper Sentinel back to block anyway, so we'll attack in here for 12. All of its lifelinking damage. They can't really block this Sentinel very effectively because it has Trample here. So we put them down to 3. We still have this second chapter of Machiko's Reign of Truth. Next turn, we go back up to 18. Hushbringer shuts off all their ATBs, you know. This Ringleader's not going to do anything for them, even if we don't block here. So yeah, we should just be good to win. Okay, nice. Yeah, we got there. Okay, sweet, so we're going first here. And yeah, I think this hand's a fine keep. You know, we are kind of vulnerable to Thoughtseize because Machiko's Reign of Truth is doing so much work here. You know, we have so many ways to put artifacts in play quickly. We've got Thopter, Citadel, and Barbed Spike counts as 2 artifacts each, so we're going to get a huge buff off the Machiko's Reign of Truth. Just got to hope the opponent doesn't have a Thoughtseize here. I'm going to play the Thopter out on turn 1 here, just in case we draw Yotia Declares War, because that then gives us the opportunity to kill a 1 toughness creature off the second chapter. Oh wow, okay, that's a sick top deck, because now we can turn our Ornithopter into a 4/4, and we have 2 Barbed Spikes that we can do the same thing. So Steam Vents into Soulscar Mage, I have to imagine it's probably Is It Wizards we're against here. Okay, they do have the turn 2 Arcanist, but we're going to start making 4/4s here, and we're going to be able to just race them. So we'll make a 4/4. Okay, another land is nice here because that enables us to play a Barbed Spike this turn, which we can turn into a 4/4, and then next turn, assuming we don't draw anything better, we can go Barbed Spike again into Machiko's Reign of Truth, which represents an insane amount of damage. So pass the turn here. Opponent's already down to 14, and Wizards doesn't have any ways to gain life, so it's going to be hard for them to race unless they have a really, really fast hand here. You know, they'd need like Symmetry Sage or Balmor into a bunch of spells. That's a cool Mountain Art. I've not seen that one before. Okay, so Static Discharge. That's going to turn our 4/4 into a 1/1 because of the Soulscar Mage ability. See if they have anything to flash back with the Arcanist. Okay, they attack, so I have to assume they have a burn spell to shrink our other 4/4 here. Wow, it doesn't... Okay, I mean, I'm very happy with that trade. So we get to eat the Arcanist in combat, and they don't have anything back to block now, so we'll play the extra Barbed Spike, and then we'll play Machiko's Reign of Truth, targeting the 4/4, just so we don't get blown out by a 2 damage burn spell. And then, yeah, now it doesn't look like they have anything, so we put them down to 1 here. So this has been an insane clock. I very much doubt they're going to be able to race, or even get back into this game now. Yeah, okay, sweet. I mean, Retrofitter Foundry really put us ahead there, but that just shows the speed of the deck. So definitely want Glass Casket in this matchup, and whenever I board in Glass Casket, I usually board out Barbed Spike. You know, Spike is just a generically good card that adds speed to the deck, but against the other creature decks, we generally want to have more interaction post-sideboard. But yeah, overall, like, you know, Is It Wizards is one of the fastest aggressive decks in the whole format, but this deck is very capable of racing it, especially going first. I mean, this hand... This is such a loose keep, but I'm going to risk it because we have Foundry, Ornithopter, and we're going second. Assuming we just have a land in our top 2 cards. Okay, I mean, if we're not going to draw a land, then Ornithopter's a good shout, but just got to hope we don't get punished by this keep. But, I mean, it's going to be hard for them to beat 4/4s because all of their burn spells only deal 3 damage, unless they board in, like, Molten Impact. Okay, so they have Soulscar Mage into Arcanist again. We're going to make a 4/4 here. Just really hope we draw a land off the top. I mean, we are running a 22 land deck, so I think the odds are fairly high. Oh, wow. Okay, that kind of sucks. I mean, since we have the second Ornithopter, I think we can still afford to attack here. We really need to see a land next turn, though. Now, again, this was a pretty loose keep. I'm probably just going to get punished for it, but... You know, I think... I mean, to be honest, like, we have such a big board presence that I think as long as we have a land in the next 2 cards, we're probably fine. Unless the opponent has a really fast start. I mean, again, Wizards are capable of some really fast starts. If they have, like, you know, Reckless Charge or Symmetry Sage, flashing back Expressive Iteration again, that could put them too far ahead here. And this hand would have been a lot better if the land in our hand had been a white source, because then we can at least play, you know, Esper Sentinel or Exemplar. It being a Citadel might have been too greedy. I mean, they can't attack here. Oh, well, they do. I mean, we'll happily take that. Since we're missing lands, it's very important for us to not get too far ahead on turn post. So being able to just cleanly kill this Soulscar Mage is really important. Oh, wow, we missed the land again. I mean, we are getting punished for a loose keep. It definitely was a loose keep. And maybe it's greedy when it's a Citadel and we're only running a 22 land deck. But, I mean, there's still a chance that we can race here. Potentially. They're already down to 5. We have 2 4/4s in play. So that means they've either got a... swinging for a bunch of damage or have 2 blockers back here. Well, I guess they only need 1 blocker because they're at 5, but... okay, Wizard's Lightning, so... Now they can kill at least one of the 4/4s because they can buff the Dreadhorde Arcanist and then flash back the Wizard's Lightning off their attack. But, I mean... We're only going down to 14, and if we hit a land drop, we can potentially Glass Casket the Symmetry Sage, we can potentially Machiko's Reign of Truth, one of our 4/4s, so... I still think we've got a good chance as long as we draw a land pretty soon. I mean, having said that, we do take 6 here, and they've got... Oh, wow, come on. So I think we got pretty unlucky, you know, like... I don't think we're guaranteed a land in the... Or I don't think we're likely for a land in the first couple of draws, but not getting a land by now is kind of unfortunate. But again, you know, it was a super risky keep on my part, so... Can't complain too much if we do get punished here. So it is a bit awkward that they're down to 5 rather than 4. If we'd been able to get in for an extra point of damage somehow, they would probably be forced to like slow down and just keep one creature back on defense. Ah, okay, they got static discharge, so gonna be able, same thing again. They're gonna be able to kill the 4/4 here. So even if we draw a land now, it's gonna be tough because we're they've managed to kill all of our creatures here. We can glass casket one of their creatures if we do draw land. Oh wow, missed the land again. I mean, Thopter is the best draw if we don't draw land, but we're so far behind on tempo at this point just because we're still stuck on one land in play. Now again, thinking about it, maybe I shouldn't have kept this because they had Citadel. Wow, they attack with no buffs. I mean, I could just block the Arcanist and use Foundry in response, but I mean, I assume they have some way to kill the 4/4 here. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for them to attack. Yeah, it looks like they have something. Ah, okay, they have Otawara. I mean, that does mean they don't get any... Ah, wow. I was going to say, that does mean they don't get in for any damage with the Symmetry Sage because they didn't have a spell. I mean, we still... I think if we'd drawn a land within the past few turns, we still have a chance. But at this point, I think we're just too far behind. If they have a spell, okay, yeah. So that's pretty unfortunate. I mean, we did kind of get punished for a greedy keep there, unfortunately. But hopefully going into Game 3 on the play, we got a better chance. But I don't know, I think that keep was still defensible. It's just a bit annoying that that's a Darksteel Citadel rather than like a Plains or something. But yeah, hopefully we'll have a better hand going into Game 3. Okay, sweet. I mean, this isn't the fastest hand, but I think it's decent. Having Portable Hole is very important. Yotia Declares War is additional interaction. Ingenious Smith helps us to dig towards other stuff as well, so I think this should be good. Okay, tap land on turn 1 is so good to see. So I think we're going to go for Ingenious Smith here. We're not going to be able to buff the Exemplar. Oh wow, we whiffed, unfortunately. That sucks. But yeah, we're not going to be able to buff the Exemplar this turn, but it's not worth playing out a Portable Hole. We could have played Yotia Declares War there, but I think it's better to get Ingenious Smith out just to see what we hit and potentially start growing the Smith sooner as well. Definitely going to play Portable Hole here to take out the Arcanist. It's important to kill Wizards creatures on site before they can start getting value off it. And then we can just play Yotia Declares War on Chapter 1 here. And now we'll get the buff off the Toolcraft Exemplar, get in for 5 damage here, and we're already pretty far ahead on the front foot. Especially because we've got Mashiko's Reign of Truth as well, which can buff one of our creatures pretty substantially. We have, we can kill any of their 2 toughness creatures here as well. Okay, I mean, they can take out... Well, they go after the Ingenious Smith. I mean, that has to be a mistake, right? Because that then allows us to kill the Sprite Dragon by tapping down our Thopter and our Portable Hole here. So now we can go Ornithopter, Toolcraft Exemplar, and Machiko's Reign of Truth, which will give a pretty big buff to the Toolcraft Exemplar here. And then we've got, we're getting in for a lot of damage next turn because we're getting the buff off the 3rd chapter of Yotia Declares War and the buff off the Machiko's Reign of Truth. So it's going to be very hard for the opponent to get back into this one, I think. Okay, so they've got Soulscar Mage. See what else they've got here. And Balmor. Okay, they just pass. Oh, okay, Shadow Spear's nice. So let's see if they have a burn spell here. I mean, they'd have to fire it off now if they had one, right? Wow, okay. So I think we'll attach the Shadow Spear to the Ornithopter here. They could have Fading Hope, but I mean, I think, no matter what we equip the Shadow Spear to, they could use Fading Hope. So I think it just makes sense to equip the biggest creature just to gain more life. If they do have combat tricks or something. But yeah, I mean, with 1 mana open and the Shivan Reef's going to deal them a damage, I think, yeah, okay. So we should just win here. There's no way they can block and survive, right? Yeah, okay. Sweet, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're getting 2nd here. And I think this hand's just a little bit too slow. We can do a lot better than that, I think. Okay, this hand's great though. Foundry into Yotia Declares War on turn 2 is great. I think I'm going to put back the Toolcraft Exemplar here. It's either that or a land, and I think in a 22 land deck with Lurrus, it's probably better to guarantee our third land, because even if we do flood out a bit more and we draw more lands, we still have Lurrus as kind of a mana sink later in the game. So we get to a Foundry on turn 1 here, and then Yotia declares war next turn, start making 4/4s. Stomping Ground from the opponent could be a number of things. We'll see what else they play here. Portable Hole off the top is nice either way though, because Stomping Ground typically is going to be a creature deck. So Portable Hole could be nice, you know. We're definitely going to go Yotia declares war next turn, but we could potentially go Yotia declares war plus Portable Hole the following turn if they play a creature that we can't kill off the second chapter. But yeah, we'll see what else they play here. Okay, so opponents on Jund here, I have to imagine. We'll definitely just run out the Yotia declares war here, get the Thopter in play, and then we can just start making 4/4s next turn. And then, assuming they don't get stuff in the graveyard, we should just be able to cleanly kill this Tarmogoyf off the second chapter as well, which is really nice. Oh no, okay, I mean, that has to be a mistake from the opponent there, right? They lose the Bone Crusher Giant. I mean, it does make the Tarmogoyf slightly bigger, so it does force us to tap down the 4/4 and the Foundry to kill it, which I think is still the play, you know. We do lose a bit of tempo doing this because it stops us making Thopters for another turn and means that we don't get in with the 4/4, but I think it's definitely, in a grindy matchup like this, it's worth making sure you get value off that second chapter, because if we let the Tarmogoyf live there and they just go Fatal Push on our 2 4/4s, we're just staring down a Tarmogoyf that we could have killed otherwise. So I think it's definitely worth taking out there while we get the opportunity, especially because it's a creature that will grow as the game goes on. So, we'll see what else the opponent does here. I mean, we're pretty insulated against a lot of stuff. I don't think they're going to have much main deck graveyard removal. Main deck artifact removal, other than like maybe Kolaghan's Command. So, assuming the Foundry lives here, it's going to be very difficult for them to beat what we've got going on here. Okay, so they push the 4/4, which is a bit unfortunate because it means that we now can't kill the Tarmogoyf off the second chapter, but it does allow us to get ahead on tempo now. You know, now we can have the Foundry untapped to make another 4/4. So we'll definitely attack here with the Thopter, and then we can go Ingenious Smith, and we want to play Smith before the Darksteel Citadel. I mean, we're probably going to play Yotia declares war anyway, but the Citadel basically guarantees that we get a counter on the Smith here. So this is a close call here. I mean, this is probably at the point in the game where Sentinel's losing value a little bit because the opponent already has access to 4 mana. And I think I like having access to an additional Retrofitter Foundry, even though we don't have any more ways to create Thopters off other cards. Foundry is just a generically powerful card in the matchup anyway, at just, you know, producing value over the course of the game. And Jund could very well have an answer to Foundry because they have Assassin's Trophy sometimes, Kolaghan's Command as well, so having a backup copy just to provide protection against artifact removal is also nice. Wow, they plus Chandra. I mean, I guess they don't have great options for the minus here. They probably should have taken out the Ingenious Smith, and then they can at least defend Chandra with the Tarmogoyf, because we would only have a 4/4 as an attacker. But now we're just able to cleanly take out the Chandra. I don't think we want to use the second chapter of Yotia here, because we can Portable Hold the Tarmogoyf, which then just allows us to attack down the Chandra anyway. So yeah, I don't think we want to use the second chapter. I think we probably just want to Portable Hold the Tarmogoyf, and then we could either play Retrofitter Foundry, or I think probably a more appealing play here would be to play Shadow Spear and equip one of our 4/4s with the Shadow Spear. And then that allows us to cleanly attack down the Chandra. I mean, we could also put Lurrus into hand, that's the other big consideration, but I think we're wasting damage otherwise, because if we don't equip the Shadow Spear here... Okay, they can see, but we were forced to attack Chandra with 2 creatures, which is 4 damage that could have gone face otherwise. So sideboarding here can be often difficult to know exactly how to sideboard against mid-range decks, but I don't think Portable Hold is actually that great here. I think Glass Casket is better as removal because it takes out their 3-drops like Bone Crusher Giant, and they don't really have any other good targets to hit with Portable Hole, so I think I'm going to bring in a couple of Glass Casket, but again, their creatures aren't that important when ours are much bigger for the most part. I like Unlicensed Has quite a lot because it takes out Croxer if they're running that, takes out Seasoned Pyromancer if they're running that, and shrinks Tarmogoyf, whilst also being a threat that can attack in the late game as well, so... And then Bankbuster is a card that I do like in this matchup, but I feel like going second it can be a bit of a liability, because against Jund or mid-range decks in general,
if you're relying on grinding and producing value, you know, say your 2-drop is Reckon a Bankbuster. If you're going second against Jund, they can very easily just go like Tarmogoyf or, you know, Rahilda or Graveyard Trespasser and just start applying pressure. So if it goes to a game 3 and I'm on the play, I think I like bringing in Bankbuster. But going second, if you have a slow interactive hand or just a slow hand in general, it can be risky relying on stuff like Bankbuster because Jund is pretty good at applying pressure when they get on the front foot. Like, obviously their deck is significantly slower than ours, and they're always going to be on the back foot against us, assuming we have a fast start, but there are definitely some hands that I see that are keepable that are slightly slower in this matchup, so in general I think Bankbuster is a card that I'll bring in going first against mid-range decks, but not a huge fan going second. Like, at least Unlicensed Hearst, you know, is a similar kind of card, but it actively slows the opponent's game plan down, especially if they have like Tarmogoyf or Croxer, for example. Okay, I mean, this hand looks pretty good. So we've got Toolcraft Exemplar, which is a really nice way to get aggressive. We have Yotid Declares War, which can produce an artifact to start triggering Toolcraft Exemplars and potentially acting as removal. I mean, we don't have any other artifacts to tap down for the second chapter yet, so opponent plays a black pathway here, and they just pass. Okay, so I have to imagine they've got removal here, and I would rather they use removal on the Toolcraft Exemplar than the Ingenious Smith. So I'm going to play Yotid Declares War here on the first chapter just to trigger the Toolcraft Exemplar, and then if they do have removal, they're probably incentivized to take that out instead, which they do. Okay, sweet. Because if we don't play Yotid Declares War, you know, we could try and bait it out by attacking first, but if Toolcraft Exemplar is just a 1-1, they're probably just going to let it through. And like I said, I would rather them use removal on that than the Ingenious Smith. Well, they Bone Crushed the O2. I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. So we definitely want to get an artifact in play this turn in order to get value off the third chapter of Yotid Declares War here. Interesting. So I think it's between Sentinel and Ornithopter here. I don't think Barb Spike is that great. So we could go Sentinel, but I think I quite like Ornithopter because that allows us to get quite ahead on tempo, because we want to ensure that we have an artifact in play for the third chapter and to trigger the counter on Ingenious Smith. But going Thopter over Esper Sentinel also allows us to get Toolcraft Exemplar in play here. So now we're just applying a lot more pressure. Had we gone Esper Sentinel instead, we would just have Smith plus Sentinel in play, which is a lot less pressure. I mean, even though it does tax their removal, I think this is just better in terms of applying more pressure. Okay, so they duress us here. I assume we're losing Mashiko's Reign of Truth because that represents the most damage, unless they have instant speed removal. Okay, yeah, they take that. That makes sense. So we definitely turn Ornithopter into a 4-4 here. And then I'll play the Shadow Spear to trigger the Ingenious Smith. And I think I'll just attack here. Right, we could have equipped the Shadow Spear, but we don't have to worry about the lifelink in this matchup, really. And then I can just play Yotid Declares War as another O2 here. And now we should be able to just kill a lot of creatures that they would play. You know, if they play Bone Crusher Giant, we can just tap down 2 Ornithopters and the Shadow Spear to kill it. If they play, so, you know, same thing with the Graveyard Trespasser. Oh, well, they have a tap land as well. That's kind of unfortunate for them. So I think this is definitely a tough spot for the opponent here because we have a lot of pressure in play. You know, even as things stand, we're representing 6 damage. Well, Naturalize. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. So we've just got lethal here, right? Because we can just go straight to the third chapter of Yotid Declares War, turn one of these Thopters into a 4-4. So we'll do that, turn Ornithopter into a 4-4, and then we can just equip Shadow Spear. We'll go on the Ingenious Smith here. And yeah, that's more than lethal. Sweet, we got there. Okay, so we're going second here. And, I mean, even though we've got probably one more land than we'd want, ideally, I think this is a pretty sick heap, because we've got turn 1 Foundry Ornithopter, and we've got Ingenious Smith to hopefully dig us towards something else. you know, and also, you know, the other great thing about this deck is if you do end up flooding out, you've always got Lurrus as well. And Lurrus with Foundry Thopter is also sick because, you know, we're going to sacrifice the Thopter here. And then if we get to a point where we get Lurrus into our hand, we can then bring it back and start sacrificing it every single turn. Okay, so it looks like we're against mono red here. Wow, they stumped the Thopter. I mean, that feels like it has to be a mistake, right? So, we'll go Ingenious Smith here. Oh, okay, Barbed Spike is nice. That's another way for us to make another 4/4 next turn. So, I think even though we're against mono red, we definitely want to get on the front foot here because we are ahead on tempo. You know, we could hold the 4/4 back, but, you know, mono red in particular, if we are against mono red, or even Gruul, is just very good at forcing through damage, even if you have blockers. So, I think, you know, especially because we got the Barbed Spike in hand to make another 4/4 next turn, we're probably better off trying to go on the front foot here. Oh wow, okay, they do have a pretty fast start on the other hand though. So, we could block the Ringleader here, but I still reckon with Barbed Spike going into a 4/4 we can still potentially race here. We've just got to hope that they don't have... I think Torbrand is probably the scariest thing on the other side. You know, Embercleave is also an issue, but we've got a pretty fast clock here. So Yotir declares war, we can just play on chapter 1, which then allows us to turn it into a Thopter next turn. And also triggers the Ingenious Smith. Plus we can potentially kill something off the second chapter if we're lucky. So attacking with the Smith there, I still like it, you know, I think if we hold Smith back on blocking, you know, the only thing we're really worried about here is Embercleave or Torbrand. Wow, and they have Torbrand, okay. But I mean, I don't think we're really winning, or I don't think we're going to be in a better position if we hold back the Smith to block there, really. Because we're just going to be trading it off with, like, their Burning Tree Emissary or something like that. Although maybe it's worth it not to, you know, at the cost of 2 extra damage, potentially. So here, we could block one of their 2-power creatures and then make a Thopter. Or we can make a Thopter before and... you know, block the 1/1 and not have it die. Which would mean they have 1 less creature, but we take an extra damage here. I think it's... I think it's probably worth just getting one of their creatures off the board here. So I think I'm just going to make the Thopter before blocks. And then block the Ringleader. So yeah, we could have not attacked with the Smith last turn, but we would... you know, all we would be doing here really is just trading with the Burning Tree Emissary, which I don't think puts us in much of a winning position. Although going down to 3 here is pretty risky. So maybe it was greedy to attack with the Ingenious Smith last turn. I'm not really sure. I'll have to watch this match back and see. So unfortunately we can't kill the Torbrand here. And what I think we have to do is... I think we just have to attack and force them to block with the Torbrand. And just hope that they miss their 5th land. Because if they hit their 5th land, they can animate Den, and then we're dead to that. But if they don't have their 5th land, there's a chance that we can still win here. So attacking like this is representing 12 damage. It forces them to block with the Torbrand here. If we hold stuff back to block, we're not in any better position. You know, if they hit their 5th land, I think we're still dead regardless. So I think attacking forces them to lose their Torbrand here. And then we can go Barbed Spike, and we can make a Thopter token off the Retrofitter Foundry. So hard. I mean, maybe... I need to watch this game back, but maybe I made a mistake not holding the Ingenious Smith back to block, and then we'd be at a slightly higher loaf total, because we're definitely ahead on board at the moment, but we're just pretty far behind on tempo. And now, yeah, they have the Ramunap Ruins, so even though they didn't animate Den, we're still dead here, right? Because we make a... We make a servo off the Foundry, block the 2/1 and the Burning Tree, and then we just die to the Ramunap Ruins. So, yeah, I feel like I made a mistake this game, but I'm not sure exactly where it was. Maybe attacking with the Ingenious Smith was risky. Maybe attacking with the 4/4 was also a bit risky, but again, you know... Oh, well, they have Embercleave anyway, okay. So they had a number of... I mean, I don't think we'd have beaten Embercleave anyway, but I think it's still worth trying to figure out where we could have potentially won that had they not had Embercleave. So this is definitely a match where we want the Glass Casket. I don't think Hushbringer's really good here. You know, it shuts off Burning Tree Emissary, but I think in general Ingenious Smith is more useful because it can dig us for removal, like Portable Hole or Glass Casket. But yeah, I'm not sure. I still feel like it just felt better to get on the front foot. I felt ahead on tempo, and considering they had the Torbrand, I'm not sure holding back the 4/4 on defense would have made much of a difference, to be honest, because if we had had to block with the 4/4, most of their creatures had 2 power anyway, so we would have lost it in combat to the Torbrand anyway. So I feel like, again, I'll have to watch it back, but I feel like it probably was better to go ahead on the front foot, and then we at least gave ourselves a way to win had they not had Embercleave or a 5th land there. Because, like I said, if we just hold back and they have the Torbrand, the 4/4s on defense aren't really that great anyway. So, but yeah, anyway, I don't know. I feel like I probably misplayed somewhere, but not 100% sure. But in general, I feel pretty confident about this matchup. I think Mono Red tends to struggle against our bigger creatures, and if we can ever set up Shadow Spear on either a 4/4 or a Mashiko's Reign of Truth, that really helps to put games completely out of reach for Mono Red as well. I mean, obviously Embercleave and Torbrand can be scary as well, but especially post-board where we have access to more removal, it's a lot easier for us to mitigate those sorts of starts. Okay, I mean, speaking of Shadow Spear plus Mashiko's Reign of Truth, I think we have to keep this hand off the back of that. You know, Ingenious Smith is also great at digging for other stuff, but even though we have slightly more lands than we'd want, I think this is a decent keep, because off the back of Shadow Spear and Machiko's Reign of Truth, if we can set that up later in the game, plus some other artifacts, that's usually going to be good enough to put the game out of reach. So we'll lead on the Shadow Spear here, and then almost certainly going to be going for Ingenious Smith next turn. Might want to hold on to the Darksteel Citadel to play on a later turn to trigger the Ingenious Smith if we don't draw another artifact, because I think consistently getting counters on Smith is important here. Glass Casket is a nice draw for sure. You know, we want to see as much removal as possible, I think. Okay, nice. We get Sentinel here, which I think it's early enough in the game where that could matter, especially if the opponent has something like a Bone Crusher Giant. Okay, so the opponent has a Burning Tree Emissary. Oh, and they have a Bone Crusher Giant. Okay, that's pretty annoying, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so I'm going to get the Citadel into play here just because we want to have more artifacts in play for the Mashiko's Reign of Truth turn. Definitely going to go for the Glass Casket here. We just want to keep their creatures off the board. And I'm going to play the Ornithopter now just so that we have 2 creatures in play, because I want to set up for Shadow Spear equip plus Mashiko's Reign of Truth next turn to get in for a bunch of life-linking damage. Okay, so the attack, we'll definitely let that through here. Play carries over. Okay, they don't have their 3rd land, which is pretty big. So I think I'm just going to go Shadow Spear and Mashiko's Reign of Truth. And I think I'm going to do it on the Ornithopter just so we then have a blocker back on defense if we need it. So 7-9, that's going to be such a big swing in the lifelink, like in the life race, I mean. So I think it's going to be hard for them to race, especially because they're missing land drops as well. And I also like doing it on the Ornithopter here because if we done it on the Sentinel, they could potentially use Stomp on the Bone Crusher Giant in response to the Mashiko's Reign of Truth trigger, which would kind of be a disaster. So equipping the Ornithopter here means that unless the opponent has an Abrade or some way to deal 3 damage, they're not going to be able to stop the 2nd chapter of Mashiko's Reign of Truth going off here. Okay, so we get in for 7 again here, and we can attack with the Sentinel as well. And we can also put Lurrus into hand here, which is nice. And yeah, I think it's going to be hard for the opponents to get back into it now, especially because they're stuck on 2 lands. Okay, they've got their 3rd land drop now. Okay, sweet. So yeah, that was a lot better. I mean, the opponent did stumble on mana, but even if they'd hit their 3rd land on curve, I think it would have been very hard for them to race, because, you know, even though we don't get another trigger off Mashiko's Reign of Truth, it will flip into a creature, which would be really big, you know, and then we can equip the creature side of Machiko with Shadow Spear and start attacking again anyway. So that's a really, really effective combination against the aggressive decks just to put the game out of reach. But yeah, on the whole, from my experience, I think this matchup is pretty good, but, you know, same with most matchups against Mono Red, you do have to be wary of Embercleave and Torbrand. So I think the key here is just to try and take out their creatures with Portable Hole and Glass Casket wherever you can, and then just start racing whenever you get the opportunity. Because even going second, I think, you know, if you can get a Shadow Spear equipped, or you can start making a bunch of 4/4s, it isn't too difficult to start racing. Okay, I mean, again, slightly more lands than we would like, but Lurrus definitely mitigates that to a certain degree, and we have a turn 2 Foundry activation, which has got to be good, you know, against mono red. Okay, Machiko's Reign of Truth is nice to see. Lead on the Foundry here, see what the opponent has. Okay, we got Burning Tree Emissary. See what else they got here. They are suspiciously mousing over the Foundry. I don't like that. Ah, okay, they've got a Braid. That's a bit annoying. So, I think, you know, it's a bit annoying that we can't make a Thopter here, so I think I'm just going to go for the Ingenious Smith instead. Oh wow, we hit the Foundry, which is great. And then I'm going to play the Ornithopter here just to get a counter on the Ingenious Smith. And if they just attack here, I think I'm actually happy to trade the Ingenious Smith with the Etching of Kumano. You know, like I said, the key here is to... Ah, they got Robber the Rich. So definitely going to block that then. The key here is to just keep them off Embercleave and reduce the amount of damage that Torbrand can do. So we're going to take any opportunity to take out their creatures wherever we can. Okay, Ingenious Smith is another nice draw here because we can play Smith and then play Foundry again, which will give us a counter on Smith. Ooh, and we hit Portable Hole. Okay. So... I think even though we would love to get Foundry in play here, like I said, Embercleave is a card that even Foundry can't beat, so I think going into their, you know, the turn where they've got access to 4 mana, using Portable Hole here guarantees they can't Embercleave next turn, because if we just go for Foundry, they can very well go land, attack, Embercleave, which is going to be difficult to beat, whereas Portable Hole just shuts that off completely, and then we can just go for Foundry next turn instead. Again, you know, just want to keep their creatures off the board. You know, same thing with Torbrand as well. If the opponent doesn't have many creatures in play, Torbrand doesn't do that much. So the key here is to just keep their creatures off the board, I think. Okay, so we definitely want to get Foundry in play. And I think we just want to start making 4/4s now as well. So we'll get Yotia Declares War. And we'll make it a 0/2. Put the Sacred Foundry into play tapped and just pass the turn here. Okay, they play a Bone Crusher Giant. So even though we would like to maybe start attacking, I think we're definitely going to use the Yotia Declares War to kill the Bone Crusher Giant here. You know, because again, you know, if they've got Embercleave in hand, they could go 5th land Embercleave next turn, which again, we just want to keep them off Embercleave and we want to limit the amount of damage that Torbrand's going to do. Okay, another Glass Casket is nice. And, even though it's risky shocking in lands against mono red, I think I'm just going to put Lurrus into hand here, because then that allows us to play Yotia Declares War from the graveyard as removal. Okay, they do have Torbrand, so I'm very glad we've kept their creatures off the board. So, I mean, I think what I might have to do here, because we do just want to take out Torbrand, because again, they could go... land Embercleave next turn, which would be really difficult. I think while I would love to go, you know, we can't go Lurrus Yotia Declares War because we only have 3 artifacts in play to tap stuff down, but we can go Glass Casket Yotia Declares War, which does waste the casket, but I think getting Torbrand off the board is so important, because like I said, they could go land Embercleave if we don't kill Torbrand, which is going to be really hard to beat. They could also just go like 2 hasty creatures, which would deal a ton of damage off the Torbrand. So I think it's just important to get their Torbrand off the board, even though we're missing out on casting a Thopter this turn. And we have Lurrus as well, so we're easily going to be able to stabilise next turn. I think it's just really important to keep Torbrand off the board here. And then next turn, if they do play something else problematic, we can go Lurrus, Yotia from graveyard, kill something. And, you know, since we're definitely going to win the long game here, I'm just going to hold the Ingenious Smith back to block in case they play like another Robber of the Rich. Okay, they stomped the Ingenious Smith. They do have a Robber of the Rich, so I do feel happy about that play last turn. Oh no, they hit a Shadow Spear. Okay, we need to kill that Rob of the Rich straight away then. So we'll turn the Glass Casket into a 4/4 here. And then we can get Lurrus into play, and we can just get Yotia back and go straight to Chapter 2 to kill the Robber of the Rich. And this is the really sick thing about Yotia. Then it just goes straight back to the graveyard, so we can essentially just loop a free removal spell every single turn if they don't have a way to kill Lurrus. And now we have Lurrus in play, I think we can start attacking here. You know, puts them down to 12. They've only got 1 card in hand. Well, 2 now with the top deck, but we should be good now, I think. Okay, Roiling Vortex, I mean, if that's all they've got, that's not going to be a big issue, I don't think. In fact, we probably have lethal here if they don't have a removal spell. So we'll animate the Glass Casket. We'll go Yotia Declares War, and we can go straight to the 3rd chapter, which will then, you know, we'll animate the Retrofitter Foundry, and then even if they don't have a way to kill Lurrus, we have 12 damage off the other 3 creatures. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're going 2nd here. And I mean, this hand isn't great. It's pretty slow, but I think it's a reasonable keep. You know, we have early interaction. Yotia Declares War is pretty good with Lurrus anyway, even if we don't draw anything else as just an interactive engine. So I just gotta hope we don't get punished for keeping a slow hand here. But I mean, it's close. I could see this being a mulligan. Hopefully it'll play out alright though. So draw lands. We're definitely going to lead on Shadow Spear on turn 1 here. So opponent plays a white Crossroads. That could be a number of things. Okay, they just passed back. So we're definitely going to play Yotia Declares War here. Oh, whoops. Okay, I've just made a mistake. So this is something I've done a couple of times, where if you're playing Yotia Declares War on turn 2 and you have Darksteel Citadel, you should always play the Citadel as one of your 2 lands, because it then allows you to kill a creature with bigger toughness. Because if the opponent now plays a creature with 3 toughness, I'm not going to be able to kill it, whereas had I played the Citadel, I could have done. Okay, thankfully we're not getting punished for it, but that's something that's always worth remembering, because I've made this mistake a couple of times. If you're playing Yotia Declares War on turn 2, always play Citadel, because it allows you to kill a creature with bigger toughness. Thankfully it doesn't end up happening here. We'll target the Thalia here. Oh well, they don't sack the Bodyguard. Okay, so that must mean they have a 2nd Thalia in hand, or they just misclicked. Probably got another Thalia in hand, I have to imagine though, which I don't know if it would be better to target the Bodyguard instead to guarantee that it dies there, but either way we'd want to kill Thalia anyway, and if they do have a 2nd one, we would end up killing that one anyway, so I don't know, I think I'm still happy killing Thalia. I want to put Lurrus into hand here because it then allows us to recur the Yotia Declares War. Oh well, opponent has Apparition. That's kind of a problem if they take the Yotia Declares War here. Looks like they're mousing over Shadow Spear. Okay, they take the Shadow Spear, so that's definitely better for us because our hand is kind of light on threats, and Lurrus with Yotia Declares War is a pretty sick engine once you get that going, especially against a deck like Humans where loads of their creatures have low toughness. So trying to think which one we want to animate here. So I've got to think what else we want to play this turn. Probably want to go Portable Hole, Sentinel, Barbed Spike, so we probably want access to the Citadel for mana, so I'm just going to buff the Thopter here. And I'm not going to play Lurrus because they could have a 2nd Apparition. I want to make sure that I get good value off the Lurrus the turn I play it, just in case they have a 2nd Skyclave Apparition. I want to just keep their creatures off the board, because one way we can lose this matchup, especially because we kept a slightly slower hand, is if the opponent just goes like Thalia's Lieutenant and just starts getting ahead of us on tempo. So going to use the Portable Hold to take out the Bodyguard here. And now we have a decent board. You know, they could have Collected Company, which is another reason I like getting Sentinel into play here, just so it taxes their company. So we'll see what the opponent has here. But yeah, then next turn we can go Lurrus, get Yotia back, kill the Apparition, potentially. Okay, they've got a Ranger Captain. See what they get. Esper Sentinel would be kind of annoying because I really don't want to have to give them a card if possible. Yeah, they do get the Sentinel, makes sense. Okay, and they play it. So that's a little bit annoying because, I mean, if we draw another land, I think we're kind of forced to go Lurrus, Yotia, just to make use of our mana. But if we draw something else, we can go Portable Hold the Sentinel and play that, and then hold Lurrus till next turn. Okay, we do draw Sentinel, so I think I prefer waiting on the Lurrus. I really don't want to give them an extra card, because this game so far has been very grindy, very attrition-based. I feel like it would be a mistake to give them an extra card here. So we'll Portable Hold, pay the Sentinel tax, and then we could obviously just play Lurrus now, but I feel like that's a risk, because if they have another Apparition, then we just trade Lurrus 1 for 1, which is pretty bad. I would rather play Sentinel and then wait till next turn, and then, you know, I think getting Yoti Declares War is actually pretty important here. Now, we could move the Barbed Spike with our last 2 mana, potentially equip a Sentinel so that we're taxing their stuff even more, but I think they're then more incentivized to attack with the Apparition. And plus, you know, if they have land into Collected Company, they can still, you know, we're not getting any extra cards if we equip the Sentinel there, because they can still pay the 1 for the other Sentinel that doesn't have it equipped. So, okay, they've got an Adeline, which is kind of scary, but thankfully, you know, since we held the Lurrus, we can use Yoti to kill that next turn. Okay, they attack with the Ranger Captain, so I actually don't mind double blocking the Ranger Captain here. We do lose an Esper Sentinel, but this isn't, you know, this isn't a matchup where Esper Sentinel is going to be getting us a ton of value outside of taxing their Collected Companies anyway. They're typically not going to be running any combat tricks, so we don't have to worry about that. So we trade off there, which I think I'm happy with that trade. It also feels the graveyard a little bit more full Lurrus on following turns. But now we can go Lurrus, we can go Yotia, and we can skip straight to Chapter 2 and kill the Adeline here. I mean, the other downside to blocking is that we have... Now we're not going to have as much back to block next turn, but we would also still have to be blocking their Ranger Captain, so I think I'm happy with that. So we kill the Adeline here, which is really important. We've still got the O2 to block this 1-1 in play. Okay, they did have another Apparition. It makes sense because, you know, it's no knowledge to the opponent that we have Lurrus in hand, so they were probably just holding on to that. So I am very glad I waited, you know. If we'd gone Lurrus a turn sooner, they played Adeline and we have no way to kill it. That's a real problem, so... Okay, they just play the Giant Killer, interesting. So, we can... I think since we probably want to play Machiko's Reign of Truth this turn, we want to animate the Ornithopter, and then we can force through damage that they can't stop. Now, unfortunately, they do have Giant Killer, which can tap down whatever we target next turn, but at least we can get through for 12 this turn, which is pretty huge. And we could also equip the Barbed Spike to get in for an extra point of damage, but the other option we have is getting in for 12 and then just equipping either the Ornithopter or the Esper Sentinel with the Barbed Spike, which then makes attacks slightly more, or slightly less appealing for the opponent, because we're probably not going to be getting in for a ton of damage next turn because of the Giant Killer, but at least this way we threaten to eat the 1-1 in combat and double block the Apparition. Okay, they have Thalia's Lieutenant. I think that's, you know, that's a bit of an issue now, but since 2 of their creatures are spirits, I'm not too worried about that. For now, anyway. I assume they don't attack with the Giant Killer here. They kind of have to tap down whatever we target with Machiko's Reign of Truth. Okay, they attack with both of those. I don't... you know, I think I'm happy to double blocking the Apparition here. You know, the issue with leaving them with the human is that if they have another Thalia's Lieutenant, it's going to go even further, but at least blocking this way, we only lose 1 creature and we gain the token off the Apparition as well, which is nice. And I assume they just pass here. They kind of need to hold back the Giant Killer. Ooh, okay, that was a good draw. We were kind of light on resources now, especially because Machiko's... well, I don't know. Machiko's Reign of Truth is going to be flipping next turn anyway, but Foundry is so good with these 2 Thopters in play. So I assume they tap down our 7-9 here, or they just lose. Yeah, okay, so they tap down our Thopter, no attacks, and then we can just play Retrofit a Foundry, and now we can start putting 4/4s into play, which is pretty nice. And Machiko's Reign of Truth is going to be flipping next turn as well, so we'll have another big creature in play. Now, Giant Killer is a bit annoying here, but... oh, wow, and Collected Company, okay. So that's obviously not ideal, but thankfully we have the Foundry to start making blockers, so unless they get an amazing hit here... wow, I mean, that is a pretty good hit. And the other great thing here is that we can make 2 4/4s because we can tap the Foundry, sack a Thopter, then untap it for 3 mana and make another Thopter. Okay, they get an Esper Sentinel, sure. So that's a bit annoying because then their Lieutenant outgrows the 4/4s here. But I mean, if they attack with the Lieutenant, we can still double block it with our 4/4s. Wow, they attack with everything. I guess they feel like they're far enough ahead on tempo, but I mean, making 2 4/4s to block here is still going to be pretty good. And we have the 1/1 to chump the Lieutenant as well, so... That feels like maybe a bit of a greedy attack. I feel like if they'd waited a turn and attacked with everything the following turn, that would have been a lot more difficult for us to beat. Although at that point we can start making Thopters off the Foundry, so... Not sure. Either way, I think we're definitely going to block the Giant Killer. And... It's between blocking the 3/3 or the Apparition. I think I'd like blocking the Apparition here because we are going down to 7. I would quite like to have this 3/3 token as a blocker the following turn, just in case the card in their hand is something like a Thalia's Lieutenant, or like if they have another company. I feel like having more blockers back is important. Plus, if they don't have another Lieutenant, we can just block that 3/3 with our 4/4 anyway. Oh, okay, Mashiko's Reign of Truth is pretty nice here. Now we can force them to block with all 3 of their creatures here, because they're only on 4, and if we use Mashiko's Reign of Truth on our 3/3 here, we have 3 lethal threats, which then forces them to block with all 3, and then, you know, even if they have like an Apparition or like a Brutal Cathar to take out the Machiko, the Portrait of Machiko, we still have access to the Retrofitter Foundry to make another token to block as well on the swing back, so I quite like attacking here. They're forced to block with all 3. And even if they have a good turn next turn, we should still be fine because of the Retrofitter Foundry anyway. So we'll pass back here. So yeah, what would the opponent need? They would need like Brutal Cathar and Apparition or something here. Okay, so they pass back, so they probably have another company, which is quite scary. So we'll make a 1/1 here. Boosts the Portrait slightly, which is nice. Then I think we'll boost the Servo, and we can equip the 3/3, so now we have 4 lethal threats. So they'll be forced to block with everything. Well, first of all, they need to get 2 hits off the Collected Company to survive here. And then whatever they hit, they'll be forced to block with. So we just got to hope they don't have crazy hits. Okay, so the Thalia's Lieutenant does go up to a 7/7 here, but which is exact lethal on the swing back. But they shouldn't have any way to deal with creatures at instant speed in the main deck anyway, so we should be able to just make a servo off the Retrofitter Foundry to block. And, you know, if they don't have a way to kill the servo, which I don't think they will, they're just dead if they attack with the Lieutenant anyway, because we have 3 big creatures to attack back with. Oh, whoops, okay. So I must have miscounted this slightly. I didn't expect 2 creatures to die there. Okay, so they play a Thalia and another Lieutenant. I mean, I think we're still in an okay spot because we're going to be getting another Machiko's flipping anyway. Okay, they do attack. We'll make a servo. We'll just block here. And now, you know, this is a kind of spot where Retrofitter Foundry is just really good at providing us with blockers. So we can attack with the 8/8. They're forced to block. Okay, they use the Lieutenant. That's fine. And now we can... We have enough mana to make 2 servos if we wanted to off the Foundry. Or we could potentially, you know, if they only attack with the Lieutenant here, we can block with the 1/1 and then activate the Foundry to turn it into a flyer. And then, you know, we're getting close to lethal at that point because we can either turn it into a 4/4 if we wanted to, or equip it with Barbed Spike and turn it into a 2-turn clock in the air, even without attacking with the 2 8/8s that we've got. Okay, so they attack here. I think I'm just going to block with the 1/1 and turn it into a flyer. And then we can either untap and turn it into a 4... Actually, yeah, we can just untap it and turn it into a 4/4 and that's lethal then. Because they only have 2 blockers, they're at 4, so we should just win here then. So yeah, we'll swing in with everything. Yeah, okay, nice. So against humans here, sideboarding, and we definitely want the Glass Casket, but this is also a Hushbringer matchup for sure, because... So we'll bring in Hushbringer, bring out Ingenious Smith, cut Barbed Spike and bring in Glass Casket. And yeah, Hushbringer is really strong against them because it shuts off so much of the deck. It shuts off Thalia's Lieutenant, shuts off Ranger Captain, shuts off Elite Spellbinder, shuts off Skyclave Apparition and Brutal Cathar, shuts off Thraben Inspector, shuts off so much of their deck, and that's all of the cards that, and Inquisitor Captain as well. So it basically shuts off all of their impactful cards. So I think if we don't have a very fast, strong hand here, we're probably going to mulligan because... Well, if we don't have a strong hand or a Hushbringer, I think we'll mulligan because Hushbringer is going to be so good if we can get it down on turn 2 here. And I doubt they're going to have much non-creature removal. Okay, I mean, we have to mulligan this hand because we don't have any coloured lands. Okay, sweet. Hushbringer. Snapkeep. And then I think we'll put back Sentinel because it's not that great in this matchup anyway. And we quite like having 3 lands. You know, this is a deck where flooding out isn't as much of an issue because of Lurrus. So unfortunately they have Esper Sentinel, which means that I'm not giving them a free card here. There's no point in putting Shadow Spear or Retrofitter Foundry out on turn 1 and giving them a free card. Okay, Thraben Inspector. Unfortunately they do get value... Oh, they have a second one. I was going to say, unfortunately they do get value off the Thraben Inspectors before we get Hushbringer in play, but... Now we can get it into play. It's going to shut off so much of their deck. But yeah, this Esper Sentinel is a bit annoying. I mean, thankfully we can pay the tax next turn. Oh, wow, okay, Thalia. That is pretty frustrating. Because I really don't want to give them free cards here if I can avoid it. Okay, so I think I'm just going to play Retrofitter Foundry here because, you know, it gives us something to do with mana, even if we don't want to play stuff from hand. You know, if they play more Sentinels, we might not want to play the Glass Casket. Oh, okay, they do have another Sentinel here. So I like having Foundry in play here because, you know, if I end up not wanting to go Glass Casket next turn, we can just hold up the Foundry and use our mana on that instead. And because Hushbringer has lifelink here, we're essentially negating any of the damage that the Thraben Inspectors are doing, which is good. Slowing down their clock quite a bit. Okay, so we did draw another land here. Actually, hold on. We want to save the Arganjo as a removal spell here, surely. Yeah. Because if we can kill the Thalia here, we can then use Glass Casket on Sentinel and then start using our mana without having to worry about them. Because I feel, you know, this is a very grindy game at the moment, so I really don't want to give them any cards if I can avoid it. So again, we could either use the Foundry here, which getting the Foundry online could be good, but I feel like killing the Thalia opens up so much of our hand, so I think that's probably the priority here. Although, I mean, we could... Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd probably prefer using Arganjo here, just because I would rather start unlocking our hands earlier. Because, you know, even if they keep going wide, then Foundry might not be fast enough. So, you know, getting stuff like Shadow Spear or Machiko's Reign of Truth online with Hushbringer. Oh, well, they have company as well. I mean, thankfully we don't have to worry about a lot of their cards because of the Hushbringer. Oh, they hit another Thalia. Okay, so that's pretty annoying. I mean, thankfully we drew Toolcraft Exemplar, which is a card we can play and not have to worry about the Sentinels and the Thalias, but I still, you know, I don't want to play Glass Casket here and give them a free card. So I think I'm just going to play the Exemplar and then just start activating the Foundry next turn. Or during their turn, I mean. And then, you know, we make a 2-2, I probably won't block with... Sorry, we make a 1-1, I probably won't block with it, and then the following turn we can block, turn it into a 1-1, untap, and then make a 4-4, which is going to be difficult for them to attack past. Although, having said that, they do have the Giant Killer, so they can start tapping down our Hushbringer here. Wow, they tap down the Exemplar. I mean, that has to be a mistake, right? Maybe they think it turns into a 3-2 on their turn as well. Okay, so they attack with the Thalia and the Thraben Inspector. I mean, it feels like a bit of a waste for them to attack with the Inspectors here, because I'm definitely not going to block the Thalia, and Hushbringer essentially negates the damage that the Inspectors do anyway. So we can make a 1/1 here, and then next turn, like I said, if we don't draw a land, we can just go... Okay, Yachty declares... I mean, again, it's another card that I don't want to play because it will give them a card off the Sentinels. And Toolcraft Exemplar is basically never a card you want to hold back to block. So in a situation like this, I'm just going to start attacking with the Exemplar. And then next turn we can block with the 1/1, sack it to turn it into a Thopter in response, and then untap Foundry and make a 4/4. And then we can do that every single 2-turn cycle. So even if we don't draw lands, we can start making 4/4s every other turn. You know, unless it gets to a point where we're forced to give them cards off the Sentinel. Oh well, they have another Sentinel. Okay, so we're probably just going to ride the Foundry here. You know, this game is quite grindy. I just don't want to give them free cards. Wow, they attack. Okay, so if we make a 4/4 pre-combat here, they're just going to tap it down with the Giant Killer. You know, we could pre-combat, make a Thopter, untap, make a 4/4, but I'm just going to block like this because I really want to kill one of the Sentinels, and then in response we can sack the Servo to make a Thopter, and then we can just make a 4/4 at the end of the turn. If we make a 4/4 pre-combat, they're just going to tap it down. So at least this way guarantees that we can kill one of the Sentinels, which is a big deal because, you know, the main reason whether we've not been able to play anything from our hand is because they've had, you know, for most of the game, double Sentinel Thalia. So now we can untap the Retrofitter Foundry and turn this Thopter into a 4/4, which I presume they're going to tap down with the Giant Killer. But if we're making one of those every other turn, it's going to be hard for them to get past. Okay, we drew another land here, and we could start playing stuff now rather than using the Foundry, because now we can play something like a Glass Casket and pay the Sentinel tax. Okay, so they do tap down the 4/4. Definitely going to attack with the Exemplar. Assume they let it through. Yeah, so they go down to 10, and now we can play the Glass Casket, take out the Thalia without giving them a free card, which has been, you know, we've had to wait so many turns to be able to do this. Thankfully, like, Retrofitter Foundry has given us a good thing to do with our mana. So now we can take out the Thalia. Now our hand, unless they have another Thalia, is pretty well unlocked for next turn, which is pretty sick. Oh, they have another one. Come on. So that's pretty unfortunate. Okay, so they put us down to 9 here. I mean, at this point, I'm just going to use the Machiko's Reign of Truth. We can still pay double Sentinel tax. And we can just turn Hushbringer into a huge lifelinker. And now they're forced to block the 4/4 with the Thalia anyway, so next turn our hand's going to be completely unlocked. Wait, they can't block like that or they just lose, right? Yeah, okay. I mean, to be honest, I don't think the opponent's winning from that spot anyway, but we got there, nice.